So I'll do a quick review of last week, just to get everybody kind of up to speed. One of the most critical features of the Hebrew language is that it is written and read right to left. Okay, opposite of English, which of course we write and read left to right. So that's important if you didn't know that. Last week we covered we went a little farther than I intended to, but that's fine. We covered the first letter Aleph, second letter Beit. Beit can make two sounds with this dot in the center called a dagesh, makes the sound of the letter B. Without that dot, makes the sound of the letter V. The Aleph is silent. And we learned one vowel symbol, the kametz, which makes the sound of a short A, ah, as in father or wall. And we learned one word that we can use these letters to form, an aleph with a kametz vowel, followed by a beit with no dagesh. So the order of pronunciation is consonant, vowel attached to consonant, next consonant, and if this word were longer, we would just keep jumping like this to pronounce the entire word. So the aleph is silent, the kametz makes an ah, the beit with no dagesh makes a v. So this is pronounced av, aleph beit, av, and av means father. Okay, so that's last week in a nutshell. And we also covered two other letters, but I intended to cover those this week, so I'm going to cover them again this week and move forward from there. Okay. And if anybody has a question, don't be shy to ask. All right, so the third letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Gimel. Gimel looks like this. Gimel makes the sound of a hard G, G as in girl or goat. Numerical value of Gimel is 3. Yes. Yes, G as in good. Yes, good girl. Although in Hebrew, the letter has nothing to do with a girl per se. In Paleo-Hebrew, Gimel is depicted like this, and it represents a camel's hump. In fact, the Hebrew word gamal means a camel. The Gimel became the Greek gamma and the Latin C. A noteworthy feature of the Gimel, in my writing I exaggerate this bottom area here, but in other texts you want to pay close attention to the leg on the bottom right, because that leg is the thing that differentiates the Gimel from the Nun. Again, the way I write it, it's very obvious what the difference is, but some fonts are not as forgiving. So do pay attention to the bottom right whenever you see a Gimel-looking letter to verify that it's a Gimel. Okay, so that's the third letter, Gimel. Fourth letter is Dalet. Dalet makes the sound of the letter D, as in dog. Being the fourth letter, its numerical value is 4. Like the gimel and the bait, you have to pay attention to this little tail on the dalet on the top right, because that is the only thing that differentiates the dalet from the resh. And these two letters are the most frequently mixed up, one for the other. So don't feel bad if you mix them up. In the Paleo Hebrew, you would never mix it up with the resh because it's basically a triangle. And the Hebrew word delet means a door, and so this triangle is thought to represent a tent flap. And this became the Greek letter delta, which doesn't take much imagination, and the Latin D. And then using the dalet and the gimel, we can form a word. So a dalet with a Kometz vowel underneath, followed by a gimel. Okay, dalet makes the sound of the letter D, Kometz makes the short A sound, and gimel makes a G. So this is pronounced dog, but it is not a dog. In fact, dog is a fish. So we have two words now, av and dog. Okay. Any questions about gimel or dalet? All right. All right. All right, our fifth letter is the He. He functions just like the English letter H, or almost just like. Makes the H sound, as in He, but at the end of a word it is silent, just like the H at the end of Winnie the Pooh. Although English has words like honest, in which the H is silent elsewhere, but in Hebrew it is always pronounced except at the end of a word. So, fifth letter, its numerical value is 5. The He, and again, these early letters have the unfortunate property of being very similar to other letters later on. There's this gap here on the upper left side, and that is what differentiates the He from another letter. And especially in small type, this is confused very frequently. So remember this gap when you're writing and reading the He. In Paleo Hebrew, the He looked something like this. And it could represent a number of things. It's frequently thought to represent a window. Regardless of the exact representation it became, the Greek epsilon and Latin E. And just to give a preview of when we get into intermediate Hebrew, many words that end in a He, not all, but many, are feminine words. Hebrew has masculine and feminine gender attached to every one of their words. That's a subject we will cover in intermediate Hebrew more extensively. But the He at the end of a word is frequently, not always, frequently an indicator of the feminine gender. So, and in fact, in Hebrew names, you'll notice that a number of times. Names like Sarah, Rebecca, that AH sound at the end is a pretty good giveaway that you're dealing with a feminine name. Although, again, not always. Isaiah is not a feminine name. Okay, so, but anyway, just something to have in the back of your mind for later. Yes?
You say the He is always pronounced at the beginning of the word.
Yes, the hey is always pronounced at the beginning of a word, or in the middle of a word. It is always pronounced. Except at the end, it is silent.
Okay. Now, is ruach gender?
Ruach is, okay, jumping ahead, ruach is a feminine noun, but it does not end in a hey. Okay, so, okay. So that's the hey. Okay, our sixth letter is the letter Vav. Vav has a number of lookalikes, but when you see them side by side, it's pretty easy to tell them apart. The yod is much smaller. The resh is longer on the top. The nun has the foot at the bottom. Okay, so you probably won't confuse Vav for any other letters. But that's what it looks like in comparison to other letters. Yes, it could also be confused for a final nun, but a final nun, which we'll get to later, extends much farther down than a Vav does. It extends below the normal line of writing. And in this class, I will exaggerate those features greatly. So hopefully there will be no ambiguity in my writing. Okay, the Vav is pronounced differently in different dialects of Hebrew. The dialect I am teaching is the Sephardic dialect, and in that dialect, it is pronounced as a V. So in the dialect I'm teaching, it's pronounced identically to a bait with no dagesh. Okay. In Ashkenazic, it is pronounced the same. In the Yemenite dialect, the Vav is pronounced as a W. And scholars are, there's kind of two camps among scholars, whether it was originally pronounced as a V or as a W. There's people on both sides. The majority seem to think it was pronounced as a W, but that doesn't mean they're right. I tend to lean toward that explanation, which I'll get to my reasoning for that in a minute. It's not really important what I think because I'm teaching a dialect that's already established and that's spoken in modern Israel, which is the Hebrew I'm teaching. But anyway, so we're going to teach the Vav being pronounced as a V. Right. That's why the pronunciation Yahweh has a W sound in it, is because a number of scholars think that the Vav was originally pronounced as a W. And although there are others who see it differently. So, but regardless, the modern convention in the Sephardic dialect is the V, so that's how I'm going to teach it, and you can do research on your own to make up your mind. Or if you find a tape recording of somebody speaking Paleo-Hebrew back about 3,000 years ago, please inform me. I want to hear it. I really do. Yeah. Yes, you can charge rent. I'll pay to come see it, no doubt. So, no, seriously, if you have one, let me know. Numerical value of Vav is 6. In Paleo-Hebrew, the Vav looks something like this. The Hebrew word Vav means a nail or possibly a hook, and the Hebrew word Vav means nail. Now you'll notice that our first letters, okay, Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, have a very good correspondence to the Greek alpha, beta, gamma, delta, and epsilon. If I write the paleo above here, it's even more obvious, although the bait looks a little bit funny. Okay, and that became our A, B, C, D, E. The vav does not fit that pattern. So the next letter in the Greek alphabet is zeta, which does not correspond to the vav in any way. And of course in English is F, which neither corresponds to the zeta nor to the vav. It is possible that the vav became the Greek upsilon, which makes a U sound similar to the possible original W of the vav. But the upsilon is way down further in the Greek alphabet. So that's a possibility. I am not as certain about saying that as I am about the first 5 and about, indeed, a number of the following letters. So for whatever reason, the vav is out of place in the evolution of the language into Greek and modern-day English. And the vav has some interesting properties that we'll discuss here. The vav functions as a consonant, okay, so as the letter V, is the consonant V. The vav can also function as a vowel. And the way it does that, there are 2 ways that it does that. If you find a vav with a dot directly over the top of it, okay, this dot is known as a cholam, right? And that signifies the vowel long O. Okay, so when you see a vav with this dot directly above it, it loses its V sound. It no longer has the V sound, and it makes the sound of long O. Okay, so for example, if we have a word, dalit, vav with cholam, dalit, okay, the dalit makes a D sound. The cholam makes a long O, the final dalit there, another D, so this is pronounced dode. Dode is in fact a word. Dode means beloved. It can also mean uncle. Dode is where the name David comes from. In fact, that's what David's name means, is the beloved one. Okay, but this is how it's pronounced. Again, the vav loses its V when this vowel is attached and becomes a long O. What's interesting about this, another slightly confusing feature, is that this cholam vowel can appear without a vav, and it still makes the sound of a long O. Now this word is always spelled this way, but it would be pronounced exactly the same like this. Okay? So this dalit makes a D, followed by the cholam, making the long O, followed by the dalit. These 2 words would be pronounced exactly the same way. Okay? As you're reading Hebrew, you will notice this happening a lot, especially if you read the Torah. The Torah incorporates what they call the full cholam and the defective cholam. There's nothing wrong with the defective, it's just lacking a vav. Okay? And so you will see the same word spelled multiple ways in the Torah, sometimes with the vav, sometimes without it. It's still pronounced the same, it still means the same thing, it's just an alternate spelling. Even the word Torah, you will find this done with, because Torah has an O in its first syllable. You'll see it spelled with a vav, without a vav. Okay? Or Kodesh, which means holy. That first long O sound, sometimes you'll find it with a vav, sometimes without a vav. It's the same word, means the same thing, pronounced the same way. It's just 2 different spellings. The convention in modern Hebrew and in this class will be that I'm going to use the full cholam whenever possible. Now, there are some words that are that as a matter of spelling don't include the vav. They have a cholam but no vav, and those I will point out as we go. But the modern convention is, whenever possible, insert the vav to make a full vowel. And so I'll do that too. It eliminates some confusion. But just be aware that when you're reading actual texts in Hebrew, you will find both. Okay? Are there any questions about the cholam?
That's good. That's good. That just lets you know there are layers and layers to the word.
Yes, there are many, many layers to the scriptures.
What's the meaning?
I don't know. I honestly don't know what the meanings of the names of the vowels are, except for one. I do know what the patach means, but the others I actually don't know the meanings of the names. I could look them up though.
When you say the actual Hebrew text, you're talking modern too. In modern Hebrew text, you'll see both. Are they random, or is there a pattern?
So the question is there a difference between ancient texts and modern texts in the defective spellings?
The question is the use of this basically the same in modern and ancient?
Well, anything that's originally composed today. So if somebody were to write their own work in Hebrew today, they would more than likely use the full spelling. Okay. But when they are copying ancient texts, they maintain the spellings that are in those original texts. So if a modern Torah scroll is written exactly the same way an ancient one was written, the same spellings, the same, scribes are very meticulous. Hebrew scribes are very meticulous about things.
So this is more of a historic characteristic of this particular
Right. If you were to read a Hebrew newspaper, for example, you would not find defective spellings. But if you open a Tanakh now that's written in Hebrew, no matter when that was written, it's a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, and they maintain the exact same spellings as the ancient ones.
The modern newspaper would not have the colon.
Yeah, the modern newspaper would always have a full, except for,
The vowel, but not the mark.
well, right. It would have the vowel point. It has to have the vowel point. Without this vowel point, we don't know how to pronounce this word. Okay, because
They put vowel points in the newspaper.
I'm not sure. I haven't actually seen a Hebrew newspaper.
Like if you don't know what the word is,
Right.
it's confused.
Well, in Paleo Hebrew, okay, in ancient Hebrew, the vowel points are a relatively recent addition to the Hebrew language. They were always pronounced. You can't pronounce things with just consonants, but indicating where the vowels are via these little dots and dashes. That was actually invented by the Masoretes, responsible also for the Masoretic text. But yeah, if you're reading something that isn't pointed, of course you won't find that. But if you find something that does have vowel points, whenever you see a cholam in a text that is composed today, this is the standard spelling, is always include the vav. It's less confusing that way, and it makes it clearer when there are no vowel points, which vowel should go there. Yeah, for our purposes, we're always going to read things with vowel points, and if you find a Torah scroll, it'll have vowel points in it. So, a Torah scroll or a right, yeah, if you get one from a Dead Sea Scroll, Torah scroll or something. No, it wouldn't. Right, it would have all the right. So, but if you find a pointed text of the Torah or of the Tanakh, you're going to find alternate spellings for words. Okay, they're pronounced the same, they mean the same thing. I'm not saying there's not deeper spiritual significance. There very well may be, but linguistically, it's the same word. So as we translate these words, we translate them identically into English, although we do lose whatever meaning there may be there by doing the translation. There's no way to know, reading the English of that verse, that holy is spelled one way here and one way here. It's just, you know. So now you may infer that the holiness has to be on a different level just based on other verses that talk about God and talk about holiness, but you're not going to see it in the verse itself. So, okay, so that is the cholam. Again, it can appear with a vav or without one. It makes the same sound of long O. Okay? All right, the vav can be used to form another vowel sound as well. So if you find a vav with a dot in the center, this is another vowel called a shuruk. And knowing the names of the vowels is not as important as knowing their sounds. As you've learned, I don't even know the meanings of the names of the vowels. But the shuruk makes the sound of long U, as in use, or the U as in moon. Yes, shuruk. That is one handy thing about the names of the vowels, is they include the sound the vowel makes in the name. So the comets, okay, the cholam, the shuruk, okay. So that's one little hint that they have built in. Yes, the shuruk makes an U. Now you'll notice this dot in the center of other letters, and when it's in the center of any other letter, it's a dagesh. Okay, but in a vav, it indicates a shuruk vowel. So in the shuruk vowel, again, the vav loses its V, loses its consonantal sound, and becomes a vowel entirely. So I don't have a word yet that incorporates this, but just a nonsense word. Well, if we were to have dalet, vav with shuruk, and then dalet, we'd have a D, an O, an U sound, followed by a D. Okay, so this would be pronounced dude, which is in fact not a Hebrew word. Okay, there is no Hebrew word dude, there is a word dode. Okay, but that is how the shuruk would function. Sometimes you'll even see a shuruk at the beginning of a word. Okay, but that is the vowel sound that this makes. Okay, so any questions about the shuruk? All right. Okay. Well, see how much time we've got left here. Oh, wow, lots of time left. I don't want to jump ahead too fast, but I will. So, I don't have handouts for this just yet, and nothing's posted online for this just yet. But I'll go ahead and cover a few more letters, and we'll just cover them again next week at the beginning of the class. The letter after the vav is the zayin. Zayin makes the sound of the letter Z. Being the seventh letter, its numerical value is 7. In Paleo-Hebrew, the zayin looks something like this. And the Hebrew word zayin means a weapon. So it's thought that this could be a sword, or it could alternatively also be a plow. Reminds me of the verse, swords will be beaten into plowshares. Perhaps it's an allusion to the zayin letter, having this dual nature. The Zion became the Greek zeta. Became our English Z. All right. And the eighth letter is the Chet. Now, Chet has an unfortunate spelling. When you see that, you want to say Chet. And it is not Chet. And in fact, anytime you see a Hebrew word transliterated with a CH, it is not a ch sound. Hebrew has no ch. Okay? The Chet sound makes a ch, which is depicted as a CH, but is pronounced, it's kind of a spitting sound in the back of your throat. You'll hear it in German, like the composer Bach, okay, is properly pronounced that way. Some Hebrew words, Chanukah, also known as Hanukkah, it's actually pronounced Chanukah, or challah bread, okay? It's that ch sound, ruach, all right? It takes a little practice, and you want to do it with somebody at least 5 feet away from you, unless they're related. And so, right. Yes, definitely somebody good-natured. But anyway, no, don't spit on people, but the Chet does take a little bit of practice before you can do it without having to think about it real hard. Numerical value of Chet is 8. And I mentioned the Hey before, having that gap, and of course the Chet does not. That gap in the upper left.
But it does have a little tail there.
It does. It does, in fact, have this little tail. And when you see a more stylized script, what I'm writing up here is sort of a skeletal version of the letters. Stylized scripts will always have it looks almost like a tav, but anyway, they'll always have this little point here in the upper left, and the Hey will look something like this. Yes?
Like the way you're writing it is the way it would be written.
Over here. You will see it. Yeah, this is the way you'll commonly see it, is the more stylized version. I write it like this to give you an idea of the shape and how the shape differs from other letters. The way I've got it on the handouts there is the way you'll more commonly see it. It's the font you'll more often see.
If it's printed, you see it like this, but if you're writing it, typically you're doing it.
Right, when I'm writing it on a whiteboard and when I'm spelling words quickly.
That's what the kids would be learning, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, depending on the teacher. You know, I like to keep things as simple as possible and grasp concepts as quickly as possible, and then move into particulars. That's kind of my method of teaching. It especially comes in handy when we get into grammar, because if you're concerned about every little nuance of every rule at first, it becomes overwhelming. But if you can use it right away, even if you're using it incorrectly, and I do fill you in on the details later, I don't just leave you hanging. But if you can use it right away, for me, that's a great aid to memory, is being able to use it immediately. And I would rather find out later, okay, there's this little detail that I need to fill in, than be real meticulous at first without knowing what I'm doing. So, but yes, the letters that I'm drawing up here are greatly simplified. But yeah, the way they're printed out there, the way it's online, the way you'll find it in pretty much any book you read, will be the more stylized forms. Now, the Paleo Hebrew did look more like this, because it's a much well, it was a form that they could both write with a pen and also engrave in stone. And this is not easy to engrave in stone. But the Paleo Chait, much more doable. Okay, so yeah, I mean, so yeah, don't let that throw you very much. Just every top of every letter is going to look like this. But the relative sizes and shapes are going to be identified by the way the stick form that I'm writing up there. So if anybody's confused on that at any point, let me know, and I'll show the contrast between my simplified form and the stylized version. Another thing that the simple form does is, you know, this is a dalet, this is a resh, and the stylized, that's a dalet, and that's a resh. And actually, some fonts even have this, you know, to where it's really easy to confuse them. And it's just an unfortunate feature of how how the script came to be. There's very little confusion in the Paleo script. So, yes, the Chait in the Paleo represents, it could be a ladder or it could be a fence. There's both are potential choices. There, a lot of times the giveaway for what the letter means is the name of the letter. However, there's no Hebrew letter or no Hebrew word Chait. So perhaps there was at one time, but there is not today. So it's uncertain what they're getting at. It does look a lot like a ladder. It became.
Maybe it is a ladder.
It could well be. It could well be Jacob's ladder. It became the Greek eta, the Latin H.
Put a pair of cat around the fence, around the roof. Is that what a cat?
That.
You know what it's called? Parapet. Sorry.
Oh, parapet. Yeah,
Wrong word.
right. I don't know what that word is in Hebrew, though. That'd be interesting. Might give a hint. But yeah, and some of the Paleo symbols are pretty clear cut what they were intended to be, and some of them aren't. There's different ideas, but you know, and the Chait is one where it's, well, we got some ideas, you know, but it's not as easy as say a dalet, because dalet means door. So it's like, okay, that's clearly what they're getting at, and then a little bit of analysis reveals it. Well, living in tents, the door is a flap, triangular flap. So, so yes, that is the Chait. So are there any questions about the alphabet or any of the vowels that I've covered so far?
No, I just got a comment.
Yes.
The way they were written, the modern Hebrew is written, and you know how you said that it has that little, whatever. I heard them say something about there's a yod in every letter.
Right. Yeah, that is a. Yeah, our comment is that she's heard that there's a. I'm repeating your questions so that people online can hear, because they can't hear what anybody else is saying. They can only hear what I'm saying because I've got the mic on me. So it's a little awkward, but I'm going to repeat your questions into the mic. Yeah, her comment is that there's a yod in every letter. And she's heard that before. And that derives from the fact that a yod looks like this. And every letter in the stylized form has this on the upper left side. So a bait looks something like that. The upper left corner is always going to incorporate sort of this yod-looking thing in it. Now, that's a modern script convention. In the Paleo-Hebrew, there is by no means a yod in every letter. If a yod was just a straight line, there would be, but a yod is not a straight line. So that is a feature of the modern script and not of the Paleo script. But that is you could make that case that there is a yod in every modern script letter.
Laura found something online where the Star of David, you can see each of the letters in the Star of David. Not all of them are perfectly clear, but you can make them out.
Oh, okay. A lot of the Hebrew letters are
We put the big 8 up and then light it up for different letters and numbers.
right.
It's the same way.
Yeah.
Star.
Yeah, a potential interpretation of the Star of David. As I mentioned, David's name derives from Dode. And in fact, David's name is spelled the same way with different vowel pointings. In Paleo-Hebrew, it would look like this. So if in fact the Star of David did originate with David, or somebody memorializing David, you could take the first and last letters of his name and put them together like that. Dalet, Dalet. Come up with a 6-pointed star. So, makes sense. You know, historically it's kind of uncertain where it cropped up, but the logical progression is there anyway. Okay, well, I don't want to jump too far ahead in the material, but if there's any questions on any topic pertaining to Hebrew, if I can answer it, I will.
Just have one little question about the tent flap. At first, you say it's triangular in shape, and that makes sense because in America, our tents are made typically with the triangular flap.
Right.
But the tabernacle certainly was more rectangular.
Right.
And were there individual tents similar to that, or similar to what we have?
Yeah, so would all tent flaps be triangular? Clearly on the tabernacle it was not, it was a square. I would think that the tent flaps of the people camping around would probably be triangular because I would think that that's the most efficient way to wrap a goat skin around a series of poles. I don't know, but yes, right. The tabernacle itself, though, was a rectangular shape, and the curtain, of course, drapes over, so it's a square, which looks a lot more like the modern Dalet than the ancient one. So.
I'm just gonna mess with you. Out there in that desert is hot. I don't want no little triangle tent. I want a big tent, rectangular door.
Yeah, no doubt.
Stretch that skin.
No doubt. And if you were wealthy, you probably had one of those. But being an Israelite slave going out among 2 million other people, probably had a smaller living space.